We've been refining the system for decades, but what if it's time to redesign it? Not from scratch, but from what we know works. You're listening to Education by Design. I'm your host, Phil Evans. In this episode, I'm speaking with Markus Reneau. His story challenges all of us to think differently about authenticity in the classroom and what's informing choices that students make as they come up through their schooling experience.
I learned about strength and what it meant to persevere from my family before I ever faced an educational trial in school. My mother remained steadfast, determined to beat the challenge before her because she knew the statistics that were stacked against me. Being the son of a single mother raised in New Orleans, Louisiana, in a lower socioeconomic status.
That was Markus speaking at a global education conference in New Orleans in 2019, just after he'd graduated from Yale University. I remember that day vividly. I was standing at the back of the auditorium, just watching this young man speak so passionately and directly about the challenges that he faced in his educational experience, struggling just to get an opportunity, just to have the chance that many, many other students just fell into. But the story he wants to tell goes far beyond his circumstances. He wants to focus on what these opportunities have afforded him and how he can use those opportunities to make the world a better place.
I graduated in 2019, and then I started a teaching fellowship at the Oakham School in England. I was hired as a Yale Fellow, it was called. So like every year, the school would hire like a senior from Yale to come and like teach and be college counselor. The school, albeit like is in an area that's 90% white, but they were aware of the fact that we're a posh British school, but at the same time we try to have our students like understand like that the real world is not like this. It was interesting being there because that was a completely different like shift than like anything I was used to. I know a lot of teachers, like I could just tell, like they didn't expect me to be who I am. And so it's like, because when I heard Yale Fellow, they had like one idea. And then it's like, here I come. And then I'm like completely different than that. And then I remember when the housemaster introduced me to the boys in the house, he was like, yeah, Mr. Reneau's like the smartest person I've ever met. And like the looks on like a lot of the kids' faces, they were just like a lot of the boys, we had like real talks where they like talked about how like, oh, the black people I've interacted with have not been like professionals. And it's like, you show me that like, oh, there's like different types of people all over.
It's difficult for me to try and put myself in Markus's shoes, that everywhere he goes, he has to wait for people to realize how astute and how accomplished he is. That's just something that people like me don't face. Markus is obviously regarded for his accomplishments in academics, but there's so much more to Markus's intellectual curiosity. It's the way that he is patient with people who are different from himself.
When I was in undergrad, I majored in African American studies and also education policy. I did that because the advice that I got was going into law school. They just tell you to take things that you're interested in. Just for a long time in my life, I've been interested in Black history. So that's why I chose African American studies. But then I didn't realize that at Yale, it was so interdisciplinary. So I got like soft skills of classes of like sociology, political science. Like I took economics classes, anthropology. And so that kind of really made me understand the connections even more than I did coming from high school. So that interest kind of brought me into wanting to do the law. Once I got to law school, I knew that I wanted to do civil rights law. And to me, growing up in New Orleans, that meant like education and criminal justice. Like that is civil rights. It's like if you can't even read and you don't have freedom, then you can't vote.
And your own human potential is limited, and your ability to connect with other people and from different experiences too.
Yeah, exactly. The people I met on the rugby team were vastly different than the people who were in African American studies classes with me. But I saw the value in knowing both of them. Like I remember too, when I was on campus in like 2015 to 2019. And so I remember there were times where I'd come to practice like the day after going to like a protest, and I'd have my teammates who would like ask me questions. They were like, "Yo, what were y'all yelling about?" Like I didn't understand. And then, I'd break down the issue. And then they would be like, "Oh, I appreciate that you didn't like bite my head off because I asked the question." And then I was like, "Well, I know deep down you're actually trying to understand." Just little stuff like that where it's like I was able to break down, I guess, like the barrier that some people saw, because they were like, "Oh, it's just like a rich white kid. You don't really care about the issue." And it's like, nah, they do. It's like you just can't be like, "Oh, you know what it is." And a lot of people, like, I'm not going to sit here and educate you. If you're really trying to recruit people to help you, you're going to have to do a little teaching.
What were some of the educational experiences that you had that informed this importance around seeing things from different people's perspectives and engaging with people who are different from yourself?
Like, I really enjoyed TOK.
Let me just quickly explain that. TOK stands for Theory of Knowledge. It's a diploma program course students take to encourage them to think critically about the nature of knowledge and the process of knowing.
Those TOK topics came up when I took a class called Norms and Deviance.
Interesting.
And under like sociology. And it was literally talking about like what is right or wrong is based on who's in power. And just like stuff like that, kind of just being unafraid to like question my own, I guess, sensibilities, and understanding that like being able to do that is how you can have like cross-cultural communication. I think high school was the first time I really had the opportunity to like bridge across cultures. Because in my school, like that charter was for international business. And we had this thing where our ESL, like English second language program, was very strong because we had a lot of students who didn't speak English at all. And so that was always interesting to be in like science class and like your partner just doesn't speak English. And I was sitting there like, how is he getting instruction? And somehow he was doing it, because I remember like he would answer questions in broken English, and I was just like fascinated. And so I think like being at school like that, it kind of pushed you out of your comfort zone.
For sure.
Yeah, in high school was the first time I met like somebody from Russia, people from like different parts of Asia, or like it was the first time I met somebody from Syria, who was, I think she was actually like a refugee from the Syrian war. I was able to find commonality with people who were from vastly different experiences, and plus two, in the city of New Orleans itself, because our students came from all around the city. And so that kind of preempted the way that I went through like college and the rest of my life. Was always remembering, it's all right to just not be completely like somebody, but you can still find something in the middle. And so I think that's why I've been able to like go all the way to Middle England and still feel comfortable. We got this common thing. We all play rugby. It's like you're from a farming village in Middle England and I'm from New Orleans. But, we can still share a beer together because both human beings.
My extended essay topic ended up being the effects of educational inequity on the marginalized. From that research, I began my foray into the world of education policy. Like my brother Ricky before me, I received full ride scholarships to college, and I chose to attend Yale University off the strength of their African American Studies department. Through my research into the history of American education, and more specifically, the associated inequities, I came to understand that in this country, race and class were both interconnected and often an indicator of someone's success in life.
I remember how powerful it was to listen to how you'd taken your high school research into education inequality, into your joint, undergraduate thesis. Would you be willing to share a little bit about the influences for the topic?
Yeah, it's interesting because my extended essay, I blew it up more, and that became my thesis in undergrad. And I think my interest in it really just came from looking around, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I know, in New Orleans at the time I went, I think it's still the same today, but it's changing a little bit. It was heavily full charter. And so I had, say, amongst 5 friends from my neighborhood, we all went to 5 different schools. I had 5 different experiences. And it just made me wonder. I was like, is it really luck of the draw?
And what did you discover? What do you feel really could help us to understand how to ensure that there's greater holistic opportunity for all students?
A lot of it really has to do with what they're shown, I think. Because if you can't conceptualize something, then you can't think to it to attain or reach for it. And so I know in my own life, I'm a first generation college student, but both of my parents have an associate's or a certificate. And so they had the idea of school. They just didn't have 4-year degree. They're I don't really know what that looks like. And then as a kid, I went to this enrichment program over the summer that was called Breakthrough. And that had I taught at it while I was in college as well. And what they do is they bring high school, college students to teach middle schoolers the next year's material, a little preview. And so in that program, that's when I first met Black students from my neighborhood who were in college, and they were telling me stories about being in college. And I was like, oh, it doesn't seem that bad. It seems like something I can do. And so from that little seed, that's when I started realizing okay, maybe my mom isn't just talking out her mind when she's you're going to get a full ride to college because we can't afford it. You're smart enough to get it. And then I would just be I don't know what you're talking about. You're just saying words. But I think when I was able to graft onto that an image and see myself in that, that's really when I think I started to imagine. And I think a lot of students just don't have that.
You're making a very important point, and before we go any further, I want to play one more clip from your conference speech that addresses this in a pretty confronting way for us as educators.
You can imagine my confusion when I went to school and my 8th grade white English teacher, I asked her, do you think I should apply to the IB? And she looked me dead in my eyes and said, Marcus, you're smart. But no. I remember at that time, the class was busy working on different end-of-the-year projects, so we were kind of in small groups, everybody going at their own pace. She stopped the entire class of 20-something low-income Black and Hispanic students, and she addressed us. And she said, don't apply for the IB. It won't be fun. And you'll miss out on all the fun of high school. You all like to have fun, right? You like to have friends and play sports and go to dances. Well then. I remember looking around the room, seeing looks on the faces of some of my classmates. Some were shocked, others horrified by what she said. And they decided then and there that the IB program was not for them.
In education, we say, every student can learn, but the way that adults sometimes limit students' potential in the way that you describe in your speech is horrifying.
Yeah, I think my brother has told me, he can remember when there's some kind of college day or something like that at their schools. They'd either come in a Yale shirt or like a Howard Law shirt, or like now they're coming like a Georgetown thing. And then their teachers have been like, where y'all getting these t-shirts, like this gear from? My nephews, they rep like Ivy League schools or like competitive schools. Cause like I've gone there, and so like I would buy them t-shirts and like gear. And their teachers, some of them just wouldn't believe. What do you mean? Like your uncle went to Yale? Like what you talking? And then they'll show them a picture with me at graduation, and the teachers like this like this little black kid actually knows what he's talking about. Yeah, they're like, oh, you should aim for like LSU. Like, don't you like to play sports? Because like one of them, he does. He's like the middle one, and he was like, yeah, Yale has all of the sports. What are you talking about? Like LSU does. They have all the sports at Yale too. Yeah, if you want to do that, you can do that. Now you get a 4-year education for free, and you play ball too. So I know, like, because they're my nephews, like they told me, like I know one of them called me after it happened, and I remember just telling him it was kind of like a 2-for-1 like uncle thing. I was like, well, you always gonna have haters in life, and then he started laughing, but then I got like serious, and I was like, but also on the other hand, like you have to remember like how you're seen, and then I talked to him a little bit about like the double consciousness that Du Bois talked about back in like the 1910s that Black people have, where I was like, yes, we know in the family, like we know that you're like a good person, you love comedy, etc. And I was like, but people don't see you as that. They just see you as just another Black kid. And I was like, so having this in mind, you always have to like remember the response that triggers. And I told him basically you have to decide whether or not you're gonna lean into it or fight against it. And I was like, I mean, somebody questions you, it's like, oh, why are you wearing that shirt? And I was like, you say like you told him, you like, yeah, because my uncle went here, and it's like, I can be a legacy at this university. So I mean, why would I not shoot for that? And it's kind of just like building them up, letting them know that like it's kind of impossible to stop people from doubting you, but what really matters is how you respond to the doubt. And so I think it's happened to all three of them. But like whenever I had this conversation with them, they seem to walk away from it understanding that like somebody else's perception of them is not the reality of who they are. If that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense, although it's devastating to hear you talk about it like that. I'm just grateful that you are that kind of uncle and that kind of role model to your nephews. You've talked about your stepbrother Ricky being a role model like that for you as well.
Yeah, I know like when I was about 11 or 12, when he was in junior and senior year of high school. And so I saw him in like the droves of IB. And I just remember asking him, like, I was like, yo, what are you doing? And he would say some like smart comment, like, oh, I'm trying to make a better life for myself. But I was like, what are you talking about? And then he would be like, oh, if I do good in school, then I get college paid for, then that leads to success, like professionally. And then so he kind of, like, at first it was just the same level of, okay, sure, that I would respond to my mom when she would talk about college. But like with him, I could see like the steps to take. And he would always tell me like, he's like, yeah, it's difficult, but it's really just like discipline. And I think he like broke it down to where it's like, you just got to chip away at your like obstacles instead of trying to jump over them all at once. Because I know now he's a psychiatrist at like a Yale hospital. And it's very interesting because I remember he told me point blank when I was like about to matriculate to Yale, he was like, I mean, if they're letting you in, I might as well apply for med school as well.
That's cheeky.
But he always encouraged me to like aim higher. Like it was very interesting, I think, because he knew his own limitations at that point. But then he was like, you don't have that same you don't have to have that same fear because I'm kind of showing you how to do it.
Wow. So, I'm thinking about a vision for the future. And What do you feel like we need to be focusing on in education today more than ever?
I guess the goal should be to teach students to understand like what tools they need. You know, it's like you teach a student how to like look for a tool. It's like you got to teach them how to critically think. And it's like, how do you do that? Well, you have to like challenge them. And so you have to challenge them to understand that like they have like the ability. It's like they just have to learn how to unlock it. Like I think about my nephews, for example, and like all of them individually have told me that like they've been inspired by like the way that every time they talk to me, it's like they learn something without realizing they're learning. And I think that's because I've been very intentional in how I interact with them. To where it's like, yeah, on the one hand, I could be your silly uncle, but at the same time, like, if you have questions, please ask me. Kind of understanding like that curiosity has to be like channeled. And I think a lot of schools, it's like they try to do too much, or they try to make up for like societal ills. And it's like if a kid has like a messed up home life, it's like you telling them to be gritty is not going to get them to pay attention in class. Because like they already got to show grit just to make it here on time. Like, what are you talking about?
Especially like that 5 o'clock scenario, right? Now you're telling them to be gritty, and they've been awake since 5.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like that's why I think when I think about the future of like education, I really just think about like curiosity being like tapped into. As long as educators keep focusing on like harnessing the creativity, then I think we'll see a lot of progress. And I think a lot of schools mess up when they only push like 4-year degree programs, because it's like not everybody wants to wait. Like some people, they're like, I can't believe you've been in school all your life. Like you haven't, because I'm still in school right now working on a master's, and they're like, bro, you've been in school for like 20 some years. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that schools can do a really good job of helping students to find out what they're interested in and what they're good at. And, that doesn't always necessarily mean going to a 4-year college. What message do you have for teachers that are really committed to helping to shape education in a way that benefits every single student?
Yeah, so I think one message is to remember as an educator, kind of like you have something to offer. I think because I know like I've seen it be that maybe because say like at Breakthrough, the type of student who went to Breakthrough as a teacher usually went to Teach for America right after. Like it was kind of like a pipeline. And so I remember from my own experience with Teach for America teachers, like they're not all created equally. I can remember some teachers who were there on some like white savior complex. And it's like the students who don't need that resent that, because it's like, I'm not looking for you to save me. I'm looking for you to like impart to me what you can offer. And so I always resonated with my teachers who like they understood just reality. They're like, yeah, I'm from the Midwest. Like I remember specifically actually my geography teacher was a white guy from I think Indiana. And I had like a very close relationship with him because he was just authentically himself. Like, and I remember all my classmates too, we all appreciated him because he like brought himself into the classroom, and he didn't try to like change who he was to make us comfortable. And he didn't ask us to do the same. So it was like it was an atmosphere of like honesty. And so like that enabled us to like be vulnerable to where it's like, I might not know the answer, but I can still shoot out a guess because I know, his name was Mr. Daisy. But it was like, because I remember Mr. Daisy's not gonna ridicule me for it. He's gonna like enrich my understanding of it. Like, because when I think about it, it was like him and then another teacher I can't remember who was just like herself, and like it was those teachers like that. Her name was Swerloff. She wrote one of my recommendation letters senior year for college. Because I remember like we butted heads because she was like the first teacher who was like, "Hey, you're not as smart as you think." Like, because I think she graded one of my essays very harshly, And at first I was like, yo, who does she think she is? But then I was like, nah, she's right. Like, it made me a much better writer.
Wow.
Teachers who, they were just unafraid to just to bring themselves into the classroom.
How important is that? Wow.
Definitely. Because it's like, as a student, you could tell, like, because as I, like, reflect on, like, say, what are my long-term goals for education in the country, I think, like, that's kind of what's missing. There's, like, a missing link between student and teacher. And a lot of it has to do with, like, the lack of authenticity. While it's like, of course, you got to be professional as a teacher. And, like, the students also should, like, have decorum.
Respect that.
At the same, yeah, it's like, it should be respectful, like, respectfully being authentic. To where it's like, and that too teaches us how to, like, interact in society. Where it's like, you don't have to shrink away from who you are. You just have to understand you can't do too much. It's really similar to theories about free speech, where it's like your free speech ends when another's harm begins. Just that, like, you know, students are not looking to be saved. They're looking to be taught. And, like, if you teach them, you can end up saving them. Like, if they even need that. The pedagogy at Howard Law was incredible, because it reminded me a lot of my African American studies classes, where, like, we would learn, like, this is what the law is, and then you learn this is how it is actually applied, like the way that it affects people. And then the third question would be like, well, what can change to make it better for our communities? Because I think, I know, like, Howard's mantra is to, like, create a social engineer. And they say how an attorney is either a social engineer or a parasite on society. And, like, the difference is the ability to utilize the Constitution to help their community and, like, the rights that come with that and privileges, etc. I know, like, as a student of, like, history, specifically Black history, like, you understand that, like, things are very cyclical in history and, like, society's arc too. And I think that's why I think I was very fortunate to go to, like, Howard Law School, because, like, Howard, like, led the charge for in the previous, like, civil rights movement. So I think, like, I got to see a lot of the original documents and, like, plans when they were making, like, different arguments about, like, taking down Brown versus Board or, like, desegregation cases, and, like, seeing, like, the briefs that, like, my past, like, predecessors who were in my seats, the same seats as me, and, like, when they were thinking about, like, dealing with stuff they had to deal with in, like, the 20th century. And it kind of just gave me, I don't even want to say hope, but just, like, just kind of solace to understand, like, you know, we've been here before and we know how to get past it. And it's like, we kind of just got to keep doing what you're doing. So I think through Howard, I just constantly reminded, like, you're here for a reason. It's like, you chose Howard Law for a reason. And it's like, no matter what you do, you still got to understand that, like, you now have, like, a set of skills to help create a better reality for the people around you. In undergrad, it's more like, you know, I'm here trying to find myself. Whereas in law school, it's like, I'm here to find myself in the law. Like, I'm here to figure out how can I use these skills to better myself and my people.
You've been listening to the Education by Design podcast. I've been your host, Phil Evans. If you like this episode, please hit subscribe or follow and join us for our next episode. And until next time, stay curious.